sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home. Long your heart has played the dancer, long you've toyed with mirrorless shadows of the treasures left behind you, deep in your soul. Long you've plumbed the dark for answers, long you've begged from beggars empty hands, gifts of life they too were seeking, gifts none could share. Friend, how long will you wander? Friend, as long as you seek your home in a land where all are strangers, love locks her door. Leave to the weak his grave, and life to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Leave to the weak his grave, and life to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Turn, turn, turn within, in silence of soul, in cave of love, find my abode. Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home.
Welcome, everyone. Many of you will not recognize this trio up here, but many years ago, the three of us together served under Hanal Cassidy, whom Swami Kriyananda asked to come to the village and start the gardens here. So it's really a rare moment that the three of us can be together in this way, and it's really our joy to share with you. So we've had a wonderful week of scriptures thus far, and today we're going to talk about Patanjali. As most of you know, Yogananda said of Patanjali that he was an avatar. And while he seems to have lived his life in relative obscurity, there's nothing out there of a worldwide religious organization, of a kingdom, this kind of thing. But indeed, what Patanjali has given us through the sutras is far-reaching, far more than just during the time in which he lived, very relevant in this day and age, and will continue to be relevant. It's beyond global. It's really what he has given us really are the eternal, timeless teachings. Swami Kriyananda was with Yogananda, as most of you know, for just a handful of years. And during that time, he was able to ask Yogananda many questions concerning the science of yoga, the how of yoga. And he was able to be a part of discussions around centered on Patanjali, being able to be around Yogananda when he would address certain of these sutras and their more subtle aspects. And so in this way, through his attunement to his guru, through that inner receptivity which is so deep in him, we have been given, and soon it'll be out and published, this new work, Demystifying Patanjali. Most of us know Patanjali through the Eightfold Path, but for those who have tried to go beyond, I'm not one of them, and make a study of the sutras, they have met oftentimes with a lack of clarity. You know, again, remembering that Patanjali was an avatar, he was God realized, and he spoke and he wrote these sutras from that depth. And these sutras represent a universal teaching. They apply to everyone, whatever path, whatever spiritual orientation. And that's why his work is of such a grand nature. But Swamiji, in writing this work, he said, I can't promise that I will be fully accurate. Now, to me personally, that just speaks of his humility. But it also speaks, I'm sure, to the fact that no volume of words can really hold the totality of truth and scripture. And so he says, I don't know that I can be fully accurate, but I can promise you clarity. And that really captured my heart and my attention, because clarity is born of calmness. It's born of spiritual depth. And that's what I want to focus on in Patanjali this morning. But to begin, the first sutra of Patanjali, he says, now we have come to the study of yoga, now. And I don't think there's a person in this room who can't recall that moment, that singular moment when they woke up and they realized all that has gone before, so much water under the bridge, all of it, at least in part, I can see its relevance, I can see its significance, it's got me to this point. I can see the purpose of my life, I can see the goal, and now I want to fight that battle. I want to practice yoga. So now we have come to the study of yoga, and it's in that consciousness that he and we begin this dialogue of yoga, of the how of the spiritual path. And so this second sutra, he says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirod. And most of us are familiar with this again through the Eightfold Path. Yoga is the neutralization of the vrittis of feeling. Most of us know it as waves. Swami introduced it as such. Swamiji introduced it as much, many times that way. But in this book, he says, really, the word vrittis is much more relevant in this sutra, and that we need to understand it. Waves, they come in, they go out, they rise, they fall. But a vritti is a vortex of energy, a whirlpool of energy. And what does a whirlpool do? It goes around and around and around. And it just keeps doing that. And it gathers momentum and it gathers force and it draws everything into it. And as far as we're concerned, that means it's drawing in delusion, it's drawing in more desires, it's drawing in more self-identification, all of these things. It's a vritti. And Yogananda uses this example. He talks about the different aspects of human consciousness. And he says the mind is like a mirror in which, for example, a horse is reflected. And it is the intellect that sees that horse. The mind, it's blind. It doesn't see. It's just the reflection there. But the intellect acknowledges horse. But it is the ego that says, that is my horse. And there's a level of commitment of our energy in saying that. But what really commits our energy is when the feeling, the energy of the heart comes in and says, I am so happy to see my horse. I love my horse. And while there's nothing wrong with the emotions of the heart, the energies of the heart, there's nothing wrong with loving something, appreciating something. But when there's attachment in that, that's where that vritti comes into play. Swamiji says, chitta is watered down bliss. That says it all. Watered down bliss. Not a very attractive proposition. And he says, chitta vritti, it's the countless eddies of expectation, of desire, of living outside the self, always thinking that something outside the self will bring us the ultimate happiness. And so Patanjali says, yogas chitta vritti nirod. Through yoga, we can neutralize, we can calm, we can dispel the vrittis that keep us bound, that keep us from moving forward. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, he says yoga, really the totality of the spiritual path, the totality of yoga is calming the vrittis. And that calmness Swamiji addresses, because Patanjali addresses it through the sutras, so many of them in this first part of the book, this first segment, way too many to go into here. But he talks specifically about what we can do to calm the vrittis. And if this doesn't work, then do this. And if that doesn't work, do that. And he goes on. And I want to highlight just a few of these. The first, he says, it's not the first, but it's the first one that I've decided to pick up. And he says we have to get rid of our self-identifications, of which we have so many. We have no birth, we have no death. We are not professionals, we are not business people, we are not parents. Really, we are not even yogis and renunciates. We're children of God. And that's the identity that we need to grab hold of and nurture and cultivate within our own being. We are children of the infinite. One time, Master asked one of the disciples, Durga Mata, and he asked her to do all kinds of things, amazing things. And she was a brilliant woman. She was boundless energy, could do anything. And on this occasion, he had bought a motorhome to travel around the country and lecture and in different cities. And he said, Durga Mata, I need you to fix this motorhome. Completely take it apart and rebuild it. And she was just baffled, completely caught off guard. There's monks in this organization, as small as it is. There's men who probably inherently have an attunement, some attunement, with mechanics, with cars, with motorhomes. I'm just a woman. How can you be asking me to do this? And he said to her, I'm sorry you asked that. And she understood. She got it. You are not a man. You are not a woman. Let go of these identifications. Let go of them and feel yourself as a child of the infinite. I want to invite you to just practice with me for a moment an affirmation. Swamiji calls this to our attention in this book of Patanjali. So let us close our eyes and repeat after me. I live forever, unshakingly, In thy bliss, I live forever, unshakingly. In thy bliss, a little more softly, I live forever, unshakingly. In thy bliss. And now mentally, I live forever, unshakingly, in thy bliss. Patanjali goes on then, and he talks about how if we want calmness, understanding that calmness dissolves the vrittis, if we want calmness, then we need to practice calmness. We need to live calmness no matter what is going on. You know, horrendous things have happened in the past on this planet of a cataclysmic nature, and horrendous things are awaiting this planet and whoever its inhabitants will be at some point in the future. It's the nature of things. How could it not be so? It's the reality of this dual existence, this dual expression. And so things will come, and we need to learn to live in that calmness, not in what I like to call cataclysmic consciousness, where we're just trying to constantly hold it at bay or conquer it or survive it at the least. But always the thought is outside of the self. And so we need to practice calmness, and the tests that we get, that's where we hone that skill best. I remember once Ananta and I were visiting family in Southern California, and we had to drive all the way across LA, which is no small journey. And we set out in our car, and it started to rain, and it was the first rain in a while. And our window wipers weren't working. We were about 20 minutes into the drive, and we decided it really isn't a good idea. I was trying to hang out the window, and no. So we went back, we picked up my mom's car, this real beefy tank, Monte Carlo, just made of solid steel, none of this little aluminum stuff. And we headed off, and we got to about the same place, and the roads were slick because of the oil on the road, the buildup. And the car next to us at a certain point lost control and started swerving and swishing and spinning, and it hit us, it went beyond us, it smashed 5 cars and just threw them here and threw them there. This is 5 lanes of freeway traffic in LA. And we had come almost to a stop, and this car, which was still going, turned around and was coming right at us. And Swamiji was singing. We had this little tape in the car, Lord, I am thine, Lord, I am thine. And we could all of a sudden, it was slow motion, and you could see the car impacting us and the hood just starting to crumple. And Ananta took the lead, and he just started chanting Om really strong and really loud. And I followed and started chanting Om, and the only thought I had was, Divine Mother, what next? Because it was the end of the movie. But when I opened my eyes, everything had stopped. All the traffic, 5 lanes of it had stopped on the freeway. These smashed cars were scattered around. No one was hurt. We weren't hurt. We were even able to kind of chug our car off the freeway. But what was even more miraculous to me at that moment, and so instructive, was the consciousness of God's protection, not because this body is spared, but that our consciousness is and remains held in that calmness, in that knowing that God is always with us no matter what. Swamiji says, he said oftentimes lately, if you can, try to imagine the worst thing that could happen to you. The worst thing. If you can, don't dwell on it, don't stew around in it, don't magnetize it, but just take a look at it and try to feel Divine Mother there. Try to feel the calmness of that consciousness, that all-pervading calm, that no matter what is going on, one's consciousness, our consciousness, is centered in the divine and the divine will. And then Patanjali says, spend time in the company of the saints. Be close to them. Try to attune to their consciousness, because that too will dissolve those vrittis. And I was recalling an instance. It was early when I didn't live at Ananda yet, but I had come to Ananda. It was my first visit. And I was able to privately see Swamiji. He was giving interviews at the time. I was in college. I had lots of questions of profound importance, or so I thought, critical, life-altering, cataclysmic in proportion. And these I wanted to talk to him about. And he was so welcoming. He didn't know me. We just got to know each other. We talked about, I don't even remember what we talked about. I remember him at one point commenting that he really liked the skirt I was wearing. I like to collect fabrics from around the world. Some I purchased myself, some my friends gave to me. I would sew things out of him. It was a Java print, really pretty and ornate and colorful, and he really liked it. Honestly, it's about all I remember. And I left there, except that he was just such a kind, genuine person. And I left there, and I realized that the problems, I'd forgotten them all. I mean, they just weren't issues. And even though they were still there, looming on the horizon, so to speak, it was, they just lacked in proportion compared to the bigger picture. And so whether we are in the physical company of saints, or whether we tune into them in meditation, Master said, to those who think me near, I am near. And that nearness is one of a blending of consciousness. And when we get into that aura, if we open ourselves to being within that aura, our vrittis are dissolved. It's taken away. We may have the karma to still have to work out and do certain things, but no matter how crazy it gets, we know that the divine alone is our reality, that we are a child of the infinite. And the last point is that of devotion. Through the power of devotion, yet just one of many, many tools that Patanjali addressed as a way to develop and achieve calmness. A very dear friend of mine, a long-time devotee and a Kriyaban, arrived at this point in their life where life just presented the great karmic bomb of restlessness, and just everything was falling apart. The job, the work, the body, the calm orientation, the self-confidence, everything was just being reduced to a puddle on the floor and overwhelming this person. And that person began to recall a practice that, by and large, for whatever reason, they had just largely forgotten, that of chanting, and just started to hold to one or two chants by which they were personally inspired. Didn't even have them on hand, and just started singing them mentally. And almost immediately, that calmness started to enter into their consciousness. It's been many, many months now, and there's still struggles there for that individual. But there is an underlying calmness that is again coming to the surface. Those vrittis born of likes, of dislikes, of the reactive process. Why are people treating me this way? Why is the world treating me this way? Why have my friends abandoned me? Whatever it is. Why is my body all of a sudden falling apart? I want to serve the Guru. How can I not How can I do that if I don't have the working body? Whatever it is, all of those things. Devotion is like a river in flood, and it moves so powerfully when we get behind it, when we allow that flow to occur, when we feed that flow with our energy, our commitment, our practice, our deep love and longing for God. It's like a river in flood. And it catches all those eddies, just like you see them in the river. I always loved it in Sacramento. You could go down to the American River in the winter, and Divine Mother cleaned it all out, the trash and the scum and the dead salmon, from the winter months. I mean, just the whole mess out of there. And all of the water goes to the sea, that cosmic sea of divine calmness, of divine presence. That's foundation. And now I'll let Ananta and Shivani build.
Saints that we can keep company with. It's very interesting. We don't know much about him, but many of us have spent the last 40 years with him on a regular basis, reading his scriptures. When we talked about the Bhagavad Gita, a beautiful epic written by Beda Vyasa with poetic form and a deep allegory. And then Omar Khayyam, the wise writer, gives us a scripture in the Rubaiyat. Christ's disciples gave us the observation of the disciples, what the Master said, what the Master did, and Christ told parables. Patanjali gives us, as Maria referred to, the science of self-realization. He says, you've got to neutralize these vrittis, and there's 8 steps by which the human being attains self-realization. And here they are: yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, samadhi. He gives us the steps, and this is why this scripture is so universal, is it has no cultural setting, it has no temporal setting, it has no ethnic setting, it has no reference to any time-space continuum. It has the process of the human soul attaining self-realization. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter who your teacher is, what your time frame is, whether you're a shaman, whether you are a rabbi, whether you are no religion at all but have had a mystic experience. None of that matters, because we are, in essence, light. We are children of God, and the process of realization is always the same. We have to attune to that reality. How do we do that? Patanjali lays that out too. If I was braver, I would have had them sing the song and just said, listen to the words, take it from there. Listen, deep within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs, to your true home. That's really the whole picture. But Patanjali lays out specifically the process by which all individuals come out of this stream of duality into the unity. It does not in any way contradict the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, or any great scripture, but it delineates precisely what we must do to become self-realized. First thing, nonviolence, harmlessness. Why is this? How can you have or wish harm on another being if that being is, in essence, your own self? It doesn't make any sense, does it? The harmlessness is needed to begin the process of attunement with the light. This is the practice of ahimsa. And Swamiji, in his new book, and Gyandev, in the introduction to the book, point out an interesting irony, that Patanjali is like Professor Clarity when it comes to yoga. And yet all the explanations of Patanjali that Gyandev's ever read, and he reads them for a living, they don't make any sense. And he's just like, read the introduction. It's wonderful. Swamiji himself, as Maria said, picks up the same theme and says, I can only promise you clarity because I can't find it in these understandings of Patanjali. Why is that? Because you can't understand the infinite with your head. You can't philosophize your way to God. It can help, but you need to experience the neutralization of these vrittis. And then you need to practice a worldview that is in harmony with the fact that you are light. You are a perfect being of God. You are nothing else than that. And as Maria said, you're not your job, you're not your body, you're not your weight, you're not your age, you're not your woefully lacking resume. You're none of that. You're light. You're a being of perfect light. Now, let me give you a test. What if I took you out, at the end of this class, I took you outside. I say, come over here, please. Sit down on the bench with me. I look right in your eyes and I say, your real name is Om. You are a being of infinite light. Fire cannot burn you. Wind cannot touch you. You are infinite. Nothing can touch you. You are a being of infinite joy and light. I bow to you. I walk away. Now, just for a moment, without saying anything, what are you thinking? What is your reaction to that? First one's possible. Ananta's been in the ashram too long. Lost it, gone. Second possibility. Ananta doesn't know about last week. Oh God, I said. Third possibility. Ananta's right. Patanjali's right. I'm a being of light. I haven't manifested perfectly yet, but I am in essence true light. Three possibilities. The reality of it is, my friends, we have to be open to that third possibility. We have to be open to Patanjali's consciousness, or we can't progress all the way on the spiritual path. It holds us back. The vrittis pull us back to the self-definitions, and they hold us back from the realization of the self. Shivani's going to talk about the higher steps and the practices. But the reality of it is our attitude has to be open to the truth. Because otherwise, how are we going to step out of this environment of duality? Jyotish was mentioning movies last night. The reality of it is that the movies, not your movie, Shivani, but all the other movies are in a consciousness in this society is duality, anger, justified anger, payback. The thwarting universe is going to be overcome by the individual hero. The reality of it is nonviolence is harmlessness because you are a part of all that is. It's a totally different approach, but it's the reality. Patanjali is an avatar who is liberated in freedom, in light, coming back to us, admittedly caught in duality at the moment, and saying, brothers and sisters, this is the way out. I know how it feels. I've been there. I know what the suffering is. I know how confusing it is. I know what the Maya is. And here's the way out. Non-violence, non-lying, non-stealing, non-greed. These are the steps you have to take because they reinforce the deepest reality of the universe is that you are a part of all that is. You are light. You are nothing but light. You are caught in this duality. In the duality, it seems very much like you've done some terrible things. But in a dream state, when you wake up from a dream, do you remember the dream? Not always. Sometimes you remember the good parts. But the dream does not have implications for your reality. When you wake up from the dream, it's over. And Patanjali is beyond the dream, talking to us in love and in support and saying, come on now, this is how you get out. Non-violence, non-lying. Non-lying. Now, for most of the people in this room, most of the people on the internet that are going to be interested in a class on Patanjali, the gross expressions of violence and lying don't occur very much. I can't think of three times in the history of living in this community for 40 years that I've seen violence from a member. Can't think of three. Can't think of more than one or two. Can't think of one or two lying. No lying. You know, most of the lying in this community goes on. We lie to ourselves. We say that we're a body. Say that we're getting old. Say that we're not as fast as we used to be. Not as smart as we used to be. Not as strong as we used to be. We are a failure. Have you ever said to yourself, I don't want to see a show of hands, but if you've ever said to yourself you're a failure, Patanjali would violently disagree with you. That is not true. You are not your limitations. You're not your mistakes. From the very founding of this community, Swami Kriyananda has reinforced in us the reality of Patanjali's teachings. You are light. We have some limitations. We're caught in delusion. That's true. But through the practice of yoga, union with the divine, we'll free ourselves from that. And we'll perfect it. Patanjali, being the scientist, he not only gives the things that we have to accomplish, but he gives us tests by which we can see how we're doing. He gives us pop quizzes. He says, if you perfect nonviolence, even wild animals will be calm in your presence. Now, you all know the story of Satyan. Our young brother Satyan was up at the meditation retreat last year. There was a mountain lion there. Satyan had studied Patanjali. He remembered if he's totally calm and one with the lion won't hurt him. The lion walked away. No problem. It was a mother lion with a cub. For you naturalists, that is the most terrible situation to be in. No problem. Faith, practice. Wild animals become calm in your presence. Non-lying. Your word becomes binding on the universe. Wealth comes to you when you perfect non-stealing. Is this true? Yes. Let me tell you a story. There used to be a bunch of young yogis. They lived on this land. They didn't have anything. Then they had a fire. Everything burned down. Now they have beautiful temples in Sacramento and Portland and Seattle, and they have a big expanding life facility, and they have all this land, and they have places in Italy and India, and God did it all because they gave up all attachment. It's a true story. You're living it. You're the star of the movie. This is the reality, is that Patanjali's teachings are not make-believe. In fact, one of the biggest things Patanjali's down on is fantasy, making things up. You don't have to make it up. There's a better script than you can even imagine, and it's the truth of your own divinity. That's Patanjali's message. Non-lying, non-stealing. What do I need from someone else? What do I want from someone else? I have everything. Non-stealing, non-greed, wanting what isn't really coming to you. These are all the reality and the attitudes that we have to cultivate. And the bad news is that this is like Spiritual Renewal Week, Winter Renewal Week number like 40 or something, or a bunch. And we're still practicing. We don't have it down yet, but we keep refining it because we're going after a pretty high goal here. We're going after perfection. We're not going after almost, or the 99th percentile. We're going for Patanjali. We're going for freedom. That's where we're after. And we practice and we hone our skills and we meditate. And again, as Jyotish and Devi have said repeatedly, the depth of the scriptures cannot be measured. They are divine. You keep meditating on the Gita. You keep reading the Gita. You keep reading the Bible, and it keeps opening up like a living presence, as Francis had with Christ. I'll give you a living Bible, and I'll give you a living Patanjali that continues to hone you. And we watch ourselves as we get older, and we practice, and we look and say, wow, I'm really glad that Swami taught us this when we were young, because we didn't spend a lot of time in the world. We've been here since we were kids, but our depth of practice continues. And there is no end to that. Patanjali is giving us infinity. We practice and we perfect it, and we look at these signs, and wealth comes to us, and harmony comes to us, non-greed. And then we get on to the niyamas, the things that we don't have to control. Yamas control, don't control cleanliness. You can be as clean as you want to be. Purity. Purity of heart, purity of environment. You know, Maria and I spent many, many decades teaching Raja Yoga. And we would have a new class every year. And we would have a bunch of people, and we would start the experiment of the Raja Yoga class. It used to be called 14 Steps. But anyway, we would take a group of people who had never done yoga. We would go through the yamas and niyamas, and we perform experiments every week. Cleanliness. What does cleanliness do for you? Homework? Go perform an act of cleanliness and then see how you feel. My favorite, I think, was Dr. William Rowley, the experienced MD and great yogi and Kriya yogi, said that he cleaned out the trunk of his car and he felt much closer to God. It's true. It's a little experiment, but it's going in a direction. You know, we spend a lot of time making sure this carpet's clean and this altar's just right and the flowers are just right and this and that and the other thing. And in that cleanliness, you begin to feel purity. You begin to feel the order of the universe. You begin to feel, this is your true home. Of course. What was I thinking? What does impurity have to do? That's not my nature. You don't even enjoy it. But that is a great step along the evolutionary ladder to come to that place where you resonate with clarity and austerity and devotion. I'm going to cheat on this exam, and I'm going to read what Davy read on Sunday. Swami Kriyananda talks about devotion. He said, and Davy read, no good end is ever reached without devotion. No true success is achieved unless the heart's feelings are involved. Willpower itself is a combination of energy and feeling directed toward fulfillment. In the quest for God, the unfolding of the heart's natural love in the form of deep devotion is the prime requisite for success. Without devotion, not a single step can be taken towards Him. Devotion is no sentiment. It is the deep longing to commune with and know the only reality there is. That's why Patanjali says it's one of the niyamas, and that's why we should practice it. What do we get if we practice it? We get into the flow of omnipresent love. There's really good stuff in Patanjali's promises. You can read them in the book. You can read them in the Raja Yoga class. But it is a reality, is that higher beings commune with us. One of them is Paramahansa Yogananda. Paramahansa Yogananda died on this day 61 years ago. He doesn't have a body, but he has spoken to every one of us. He has guided us step by step, blow by blow, through the founding and growth of this community, and he will tomorrow from that place. And Sri Yukteswar, and Lahiri Morshai, and Babaji, and Christ, and Patanjali, and Sister Gyanamata, and Rajsi Janakananda, higher beings from not a physical place, but from a place of infinite love that is our true home. God bless you all.
All of us are disciples of Patanjali. We practice what he teaches every day. And we've come now to the practical part of our lesson. So I'd like to invite you, if you will, to stand up just for a moment. Everything that we do follows one of the precepts and practices of Patanjali. Let's take a double breath and tense the body slowly. Gradually, strongly, exhale through the mouth and gradually relax. Just let go of false identity. Again, slowly, with enjoyment, strongly, and let go. And again. exhale and enjoy, just for a moment, this sense of freedom. We'll do one other exercise only. I invite you to put your hands on your hips, and I'd like you to make your spine tense. And keeping that tension, just push down to the left and relax, and to the right, as we do in the energization. But concentrate on the spine, the deep spine, the Sushumna. Let's do this several times, enjoying. Focus on the tension in the spine. The spine is immovable. Twice more, 2 more cycles, left and right. Last one. Relax. Let's stand for a moment in Tadasana with the eyes closed. Visualize the Sushumna, a shaft of light coming up from the center of the earth up to the highest locus, a shaft of light in which we are suspended. We are this light. And please sit down. Thank you. In this visit to Ananda, I'm staying with Nirmala and Dharmadas. And in their house, right before you go outside the door, there's a sweet little sign. And it's a painting or a picture of a girl, a young girl, and she has a little brother and a little sister with her and some pets and everything. And they're looking off into the distance, and there is this luminous kind of castle, this dreamlike master looking up on that high mountain. And the words that are written over it really struck me the other day. It very simply says, count your blessings. We have so many blessings. The scriptures say, and I don't know where, even though I always quote it, the Indian scriptures say, amongst all blessings there are 3 that are the most important. The first one is having a human body. This might seem strange, what kind of blessing is this? But the lower life forms don't have the electric body or the astral body that we do, through which we can realize God. And in Patanjali, we come to the next step, which is asana, which is establishing the body in the proper position. We might think this isn't important, but in Master's writings, we see how much it is. In his early writings on Kriya Yoga, which are not very long on the practice of Kriya, 1 page out of 3 of his explanation of the technique he devotes to how we should sit in meditation. In the Mahabharata, in the Bhagavad Gita, and Devi was mentioning this the other day, we have the symbol of Arjuna's bow. And the bow has its bow part, which is round, and then the string, which is very straight. So during these next moments when I'm talking, I invite you, if you wish, to follow along on things that I'll be saying, different suggestions that I'm going to be making. As we sit now, let's try to achieve that practice which Patanjali gives us as the 3rd of the 8 branches. And as we're sitting, let's try to make the front part of the body actually a bow by lifting the chest and bringing together the shoulder blades. Bring them together and down. And relax. Keep the chest up and the chin parallel. So this is the physical body in the shape of the bow. And as Master says, a bent spine is the enemy of self-realization. How often during meditation do we let gravity take its course and it pulls the shoulders forward? So let your shoulders come forward as though you're 45 minutes into a meditation and you're kind of the vertebrae have all squished down and everything. And then let's very gently just lift the chest, put the shoulder blades together, bring the shoulders down, and relax into this bow position. Can you feel that? Now, inwardly, stretch out the string part of the bow, the Sushumna. Feel that there's a magnet at the Sahasrara chakra. And inwardly, just let the Sushumna grow a little longer. The cervical vertebrae are straightening out. And now at the southern pole, below the Muladhara chakra, it's pulling us down just a little bit, that magnetic pull. North and south magnets. And here we are, suspended between these two poles. Just relax into this position. And the body remembers this position. When we do our Kriya in this position, the physical body is aligned, and Kriya itself aligns our astral body. As the currents go up and down in the spine, the chakras come into alignment. The vrittis come into alignment. And relax now and open your eyes, or keep them closed as you wish. So this is asana for the physical body and for our astral body, to set ourselves up at the beginning of each meditation so that we're suspended in that shaft of light. We're, as some of people in sports say, we're in the zone. We can feel that channel in the Sushumna. So this is the first of the blessings, to have a human body. Let's make the most of it so that we can get as far as we can with our practices. The second blessing, according to the scriptures, is to follow a true path, and how blessed we are to have this path of Raja Yoga. We are all disciples of Master. We are all disciples of Patanjali. And what the scriptures mean is a path that leads us to self-realization, to knowing God. And through Patanjali, we go through all of the stages. And we go with the help of the third great blessing, which is to have a true guru, a Sat Guru. Master left us 61 years ago, but he's never left us. He's always guiding us. This evening we're going to have a ceremony, a devotional ceremony, that's dedicated both to Master and to Sri Yukteswar. But let's look now at the higher stages of Patanjali's path and how our practices relate and in a way fulfill Patanjali's promise that when we practice faithfully, we will achieve the end, the goal of this path, which is samadhi, complete union through absorption in God. After asana comes pranayama, the control of energy. And I won't stop here very much, except to say we have the purest form of pranayama that was given to us by Yogananda, his great contribution to Patanjali's science of Raja Yoga, and that's the energization exercises. Every time when I practice these exercises, I think of Master and how blessed we are to be able to have such a simple, clear, straightforward, compact, efficient way to practice pranayama, to get control of the life energy, to increase that life energy. What does it take to get into samadhi? So much energy. And where are we going to get that? From our food, from avocados, we're going to get it directly from the source. And even that simple exercise that we just did, that double breathing, where we slowly tense and vibrate using all of our willpower, tense with will, and then relax and feel that flow of grace coming down. We see that almost all of our practices have this dual aspect to it. Two parts. The Kriya does, the upflowing current, the offering and the receiving of grace, which we see also in the energization, the tense with will. And then the receiving, the relax and feel that grace. Every practice that we have, we can touch God. We can touch God's infinite power and energy as we practice the energization exercises, we can go into samadhi, practicing the energization exercises as we deeply feel that prana and direct it into every cell, every muscle. That was Yogananda's original description, very, very long. I can't think of all of it now, but the will tissue system of muscle, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay? Getting that prana into every part of our being. Kriya is again a practice of pranayama at the highest form, taking control of the energy with our mind and our willpower, focusing that energy inward and bringing it into the higher chakras. How blessed we are, not just to know Patanjali, but to have the techniques in which we can practice and realize the scripture of Patanjali. We go to the next phase, which is pratyahara. We're dealing now not just with energy, but with energy as it expresses through the mind. And we are interiorizing the mind. We talk a lot, and very justifiably so, about devotion on the spiritual path and how important it is. One of the definitions of meditation, so I've heard in this little story, a disciple comes to his master, and he's been practicing meditation for a little while, but he wants to clarify something. And he says, Master, what should I meditate with, the heart or the mind? Which is it? And the master says to him, meditation happens spontaneously when the mind is perfectly calm and the heart is completely open. So it's both of these. And we have so many heart-opening techniques, but we also have all of the techniques that we need for maximizing the power of the mind. What an incredible tool the mind is. We can turn the mind into a laser to be incisive, to overcome delusion, to fulfill the Shankya, to walk away from the world and say, it's not going to give me fulfillment. We need discrimination and discernment. When we practice pratyahara and dharana, and we'll be getting into the Hong Sa technique, we are developing the natural power of the mind, and we shouldn't be afraid to do that. The mind, like a laser, if we take that simple experiment that we all did when we were children of the magnifying glass and go out at noon and hold it over a piece of paper and focus the rays of the sun, and the paper will ignite. We want to ignite our delusion and all of those karmas, and we do that through the practice of Kriya. But to get to the practice of Kriya, we need to have the mind that is interiorized and not wandering all over the world, and is sharp like that laser that can penetrate, that drill that will go through. Pratyahara, bringing the mind inward. And then we come to the practice of dharana, which is to concentrate the interiorized mind. Now, Hong Sa is a practice that expresses both pratyahara and dharana, and then becomes dhyana and leads us to samadhi. So I'd like to be here with you now in this progression, in this journey. We've heard from Maria how important our self-identification is. We have all the false identifications that we want to get rid of. But how do we do that? We have the practice of affirmation, which is so powerful and one of Master's major tools that we practice often and can practice even much, much more. Even in prayer, Master says, before you pray, do the affirmation, my Father and I are one. And repeat that until you are convinced, until you feel that you are united with God, that everything that He has, you have. And only in that consciousness then, open your heart and pray and let the grace flow in. So the power of affirmation. And let's look now at the power of Hong Sa. There's two aspects to dharana. One is that it's a discipline. As we discipline our body, as we sit in asana, we discipline our mind. Hong Sa is the interior asana, where we're focusing and we become still. We focus on one thing, the only thing, just like Arjuna in the story, which I think all of you know, but I love to tell it for one reason, because it helps me remember my little Arjuna, whom I see not very much. There's Arjuna with all of his brother disciples under their guru, Dronacharya, and there's the great contest. And in a tree very, very far away, there's a bird. And they need to take their arrow and shoot it directly through the eye of the bird. And so Dronacharya calls up each one of the other students, and he asks them, before they start, before you pick up your bow, tell me, what do you see? And the other disciples say, oh, Master, I see you, I see my brother disciples, I see the tree, I see the forest, I see this platform. And the teacher says to them, go ahead and shoot, but you won't succeed. At the very end, Arjuna comes up, and the same question is put to him. What do you see? And we all know the response. I see the eye of the bird. And the teacher asks him, nothing else? No, Master, nothing else. Shoot, said the Master, and you will be victorious. The practice of Hong Sa helps us to achieve what Arjuna achieved in an outward way in this little story, because the eye of the bird is there for us, and when we can focus on it, we can get to it, and that will be our samadhi. So I'm going to talk a bit about Hong Sa now, and as I speak again, I invite you, if you wish, to follow along. We're concentrating inwardly, a pratyahara, on something that we always have with us, and that is the breath. But what is the breath, actually? The breath is a symbol of this entire universe, the binary principle on which the universe was created, duality, the pran and the apan. In a way, we can say this entire universe is breathing. There's the pran and the apan of the universe. There's the day and the night of Brahma. There's all of the other expressions of duality. And when we sit and do Hong Sa, we can get ourselves in line with the pulsation of the universe by getting in tune with our breath. Our breath is the symbol of everything, the symbol of the universe, the symbol of that binary principle. And we want to get on and in the breath, not just to observe it. So let's, for a moment, just observe. Just sit as you are. Sit nicely if you wish, that nice bow where the chest is up and the shoulder blades are together and slightly down. Letting the breath flow, conscious passivity. Just find the breath, letting it flow completely. And try to feel the breath. Get a tactile contact with it. As Swami Kriyananda teaches us, feel it as it enters the nostrils. Try to feel that, the passage of air. Focus on the feeling, the tactile sense. And keep your mind on that tactile sensation. Follow the breath as it rises up in the nasal passage, focusing on the tactile sense. Follow that sensation all the way up to the spiritual eye. And feel that the spiritual eye is breathing. You're not making it breathe. It is breathing you. And try to imagine now that every cell in your body is breathing. Every one. Not just your lungs, not just the feeling in your spiritual eye, but every cell in your body is pulsating. And is pulsating in rhythm with the universe. Not with the rhythm of your heartbeat or any mental construct. But the universe is breathing in you. And now, try to take one more step. Don't see or feel the breath only, but become it. You are breath. You are breathing the universe, the planets, the galaxies. Feel yourself breathing in the entire cosmos. And relax and open your eyes if they're closed. This is a practice of dharana that starts on focusing on one thing, especially helpful to have a visualization, to have a tactile sense, and moves to dhyana, which means to become that which we observe. So in Hong Sa, we don't want to only observe the breath, but become the universal breath. I'd like to interject before we get on to the last part of the Hong Sa, something that Nirmala told me the other evening. She said once long ago, and long ago, she said, was when there were hardly any telephones in the community. Once long ago, when Swami was in seclusion, he came out and he called me early one morning and he said, Nirmala, we can find God just through Hong Sa. Think about that. We know that Master, as a young man, practiced Hong Sa for, the time periods differ, 7 hours, 8 hours a day. And he's told us if you want to be a master in this lifetime, practice Hong Sa for 3 hours. And we're all heaven bent with Kriya. And we race to get there and to get the higher Kriyas. And it is a liberating technique. But through Hong Sa, we can get to samadhi. We can find God. We can enter into total absorption. There's a second aspect of the technique, and that's the mantra. And as we know, the astral breath itself is chanting because everything that moves has a sound. And when the prana moves through us, it makes the mantra of Hong Sa, which we don't have to make. We just need to perceive. So much of the spiritual path is a matter of perception. Meditation happens spontaneously when the mind is totally calm. Maria was telling us and Ananta how important it is to establish ourselves in the truth of our being. Who are we? I am light. I am infinite. I am not the ego. I am not the body. Well, we can read this. We can tell ourselves this. We can affirm this. But when we practice Hong Sa, we get down to the actual experience that we are spirit. And it happens not by repetition, but it happens vibrationally. Our real transformation happens through vibration, the most powerful force in the universe. Universe was created with vibration. It's the most powerful healing form. Master's healing techniques, he called at one point vibratory healing. The pulsation of the universe is vibrating within us, and that vibration is transforming our consciousness. I am spirit. And we can achieve that state of egolessness through the practice of Hong Sa, because every time, with every cycle, with every pulsation of the breath, we are affirming at the deepest level, I am infinite. And it's not a thought, it's not words, it's not even Sanskrit. It is pure vibration, it is pure bija. And the more we practice and get on the wave of the breath and let the breath sing to us and get into the chant. We love chanting. Hong Sa is the deepest inner chanting that we can do. Hong Sa, I am infinite. And let the vibration permeate and change our consciousness until the point where dharana again becomes dhyana, and we are not repeating the mantra. The mantra is singing in us, and we are the mantra. The mantra with the breath, two sides of the same coin. And on that wave of Hong Sa, we find the stillness, the point between I and spirit, that perfect calmness of mind in which we can enter into the shaft of light and go into oneness with God. This is our destiny, samadhi, and we have the tools. Thanks to Patanjali, thanks to Master and Swami, who have made practical for every one of us the path of Raja Yoga that leads us from where we are right now into the infinite consciousness. As Master said, the time for knowing God is now. We have the tools. Master promised us that if we practice deeply, regularly, by deeper, longer, thirsty, guru-given meditation, comes this celestial samadhi. This is our destiny, and it is my great honor to share that destiny with all of you. Master bless us.